I know it's responsibility and ethical behavior, but how and what can we do to incorporate the law of karma and reincarnation in our lives today to make it better for tomorrow, for us and for everyone?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head when you said it's about morality and ethics, something which are becoming increasingly absent in this modern world. We see businesses, politicians, and other people of influence behaving without the slightest trace of morality. And morality and ethics, these have become quaint words, things that belonged in a previous era and which we've now, to some extent, abandoned. And yet, ethics and morality and doing the right thing lie at the heart of every spiritual pursuit, every religion, and every philosophy worth its name.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 4 of That Death Show. Tim, how do you feel? We've made it to episode 4. How do you feel?
Yes, we've made it to episode 4 despite a number of trials and tribulations, but as we'll be discussing in today's episode, these are all part and parcel of life and great learning opportunities.
Yes, they are. They are indeed. And huge congratulations, really quick. Your documentary, which came out in summer of 2024, this summer, it's called The Myth of Death. Now, you can watch it for free on That Death Show YouTube channel. It came in last night. The email came in last night around midnight that you made finalist for the Round the Globe Film and Music Festival in the category Films Focused on Hope. So congratulations to you.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And I hope more people watch the film because it has proved to be useful and people have found it comforting in a strange sort of way. That was one of the purposes of it, of course, to make it comforting and to take the fear out of death. This is the most important thing, of course.
And that's our goal here on That Death Show, is to help offer comfort and hope and ease. And it's natural, it's normal, it's beautiful, it's sacred. Death is nothing to be afraid of. So our topic today, we're going to be covering rebirth, reincarnation, and the ultimate law of karma. Now, Tim, whenever I do say to people that I look forward to death, it is not well received. I still get stared at. But remember, the reason I say that is because it's natural, it's normal, it's an absolute. It is the most sacred of times. And through understanding death, we can learn the meaning of life. And also, we want to say here on That Death Show, you don't have to have a near death experience. You don't have to have one to access the wisdom that is gained there. So, thank you for being with us here on That Death Show. Last week, we talked about planning our lives, planning our birth and what we would go through, our bodies and our locations, and picking our parents. And today we go into the golden rule. It is often called the golden rule throughout religions. It is ethics and personal accountability. Today we go into karma and reincarnation. So, Tim, when I toss it over to you, almost everyone who hears the word karma, they automatically think punishment and reward. Can you elaborate, please?
Well, indeed, that's how many people will perceive what we call this law of laws. It's perhaps the most important of all the cosmic laws, because if you think about it, reincarnating time after time, evolving over epochs and thousands of years and numerous different lives, it would be meaningless if there were no harmonizing or controlling principle. And this is the law of karma, otherwise known as the law of cause and effect, which is quite simple. Every cause has an effect and every effect has a cause. We don't live in a purposeless, accidental, random universe. Everything that happens in the world has its previous causes, whether we recognize them or not. So karma modulates, moderates, regulates our life. And the purpose of this law is, as you say, Anne, to create or restore equilibrium, harmony, and balance where that has been disturbed. So if we've done terrible things in a past life, if we've exploited people or killed people or done bad things to people in relationships, there will be effects of that in future lives. Equally, if we've led good lives and tried to help people, we will have built up what the Buddhists call merit, and hopefully we will experience more positive things in the future. But although the law of karma is very simple in its objectives, its workings can be very, very mysterious, and we can't always apply human logic to exactly what happens. We have to accept that there are mysterious parts of this process we don't understand yet.
Well, karma meaning it's a Sanskrit term that actually means what action or deed, period. That's it. And there isn't, when we say the ultimate immutable law, whether you believe in it or not, it is an absolute fact. And I often say that there would be no need for law enforcement if we truly understood this law. I am baffled at how much self analysis I'm going through to try to do right, not only to reap what I sow if it's good, but to make sure that it's good for the benefit of all beings. How is my behavior here on planet Earth? And many people, when they go through a difficult time, Tim, they will say, and if we watch the news, all we have to do is turn on the news right now. There will be many stories where people will say, but that's not fair. What happened there was absolutely not fair. How could you possibly justify that? We touched on this in the past. Can you elaborate on horrors that happen to young people, or things that you think you might even think that they're unfair? Why do those happen?
Well, people perceive them as unfair because they don't understand the full context in which they appear. What people have to understand is it's not just our actions, and as you say, the word karma comes from kri, the Sanskrit word for action or doing. It also comes from our thoughts and our emotions and other things as well. So these also have a ripple effect in the universe and come back to us at some point in the future. What karma means is you might get away with some terrible crime in this life, but you never get away with it in cosmic terms, because whatever you've done will come back to haunt you. There will be repercussions of everything that we do. And this is what it's necessary for people to understand. So if bad things happen to people, unless people know what their past lives are, then there is no way that they can put them into any kind of context. Of course, karma may play out in a current life. We may do something at some point and there are repercussions. We may rob a bank and then get sent to jail for 10 years. So that's an instant form of karma. But most karma plays out over a longer period of time.
I believe that motive is everything. I think that, thank you for that, by the way. I think it is our intention behind what we do and how the karma plays out. For example, being a soldier in a war that is not your own fight, you're out there murdering people, but it is not your intention to go murder those people. I would imagine the immutable law will factor that in.
Indeed, it will. And we'll be dealing with this a little later on in the program, because this is not just about something you do personally, but something you do as part of a collective, because as well as personal karma, there's also collective karma, and we'll deal with that a little later on.
It's a lot to get our heads around. And again, we say there are no victims. And I think we kind of like to feel sorry for ourselves in a way, going, oh, if these people were only this, and if that hadn't happened, then I would have this. If we just understood that this is just a tiny sliver of our existence, that we are eternal beings, and it goes on and on and on. There are no victims. And I remember younger thinking, well, I didn't like that, but it's true. There are no victims. Tim, for people who don't believe in reincarnation, now more and more are these days. In the East, absolutely. But in the West, we got a way to go. But for those who absolutely don't believe in reincarnation, karma still applies. But they think, why do I even need to behave at all? If I'm not caught at all by, the cops, or no one knows, no one sees, then why should I do good anything?
Well, because people are ultimately going to find out anyway whether they believe in reincarnation or not. And as Woody Allen so colorfully put it, I didn't believe in reincarnation in my last life, and I still don't.
That's absolutely true. And can you expand a little bit about that? I still don't in this life. The final say on good or bad karma. So we always think about the bad karma, but what about good karma? Can we touch on that a little bit, from what the benefits of that is and are?
Well, I think one of the important things, Anne, is to say that there is no such thing as good karma or bad karma. It simply depends upon the context. For example, if you're born into a miserable life, all your relationships go wrong, you never have any money, you're always getting fired from the job, you become homeless, and all sorts of other horrible things happen to you despite your best intentions, then that actually might be something beneficial for you, because in a past life you might have had one of lazy, idle luxury in which you didn't have to lift a finger and all privilege and position and power flowed effortlessly to you. So in this life, you need to compensate in some way, because one of the purposes of reincarnation is so the soul can experience life in all its horror and hope, all its glory and goriness and everything. We have to experience the extremes and the contrasts. So if you're born into a miserable existence, it might be a necessary compensatory incarnation for you in order to help your soul's growth. It's said that most of our incarnations are not easy. Only the odd one proves to be a fairly easy ride for us. Most of them are a challenge.
I got an email not long ago from a fellow that was trying to talk me into this Kundalini exercise. So, therefore, I could earn from the masters not to have to reincarnate again. I thought, well, that's interesting.
How much did
And
that
there's
cost?
also nearby.
$200.
I thought, wow, I said, that's a great product to have. And I think if we asked the masses, those who are listening right now or viewing, I think most people would say, F that. I'm definitely not going to come back. I do not want to come back. But I personally know that I think I'm supposed to keep coming back because it's for the benefit of all. And there's more growth and there's so much suffering. And I'm not going to leave until everybody's done. That's what I think I'd like to do. I think, but there are many nights that I lay there going, maybe I can see it is difficult. It's really difficult. It's a hellish place. And in the teachings, it is called here on earth, it is called Mialba, which any man inhabited planet is known as a hell, because there are greater sufferings here than any Hollywood movie could ever describe. And so there's also these classes, I think it's in Totnes, that they offer. If you take this workshop, you can erase 5,000 years of bad karma. What do you think about that? It's like 100 pounds or something like that.
Well, I don't think we can say on the airwaves precisely how I might describe this in a private conversation, but I think it's absolutely nonsensical to have a reincarnation immunity certificate of some kind, which you can present to St. Peter at the gates saying, look, mate, I'm staying here. I'm not coming back again.
Can we though? Isn't there? I know there's the selfish Buddhas, and we can get into that, which I found a very fascinating topic, where people choose to actually go to enlightenment and sit there. But this is after many an unfathomable amount of time once you have earned that. But is there any way we can choose to say, look, I'm not ready to go yet. I would like to stay here and rest for a while. I don't know if I'm ready for another Earth round. Is it possible to put off reincarnation?
I think to some extent, incarnation happens when it's appropriate, when the right circumstances are appropriate, and that has to be in an environment, an epoch, a different place to the ones we've been in before. It has to be the appropriate circumstances, and also the opportunity of meeting certain key people, members of our own soul group. So this is all incredibly complex stuff. You do hear stories, particularly associated with near-death experiences, where people are reluctant to reincarnate. We know this from past life regressions, but inner forces say, look, you can't stay here forever. It's not a permanent holiday camp. You have to get down there into the penitentiary prison planet and progress on your journey. You haven't got any choice about this. You have to go on.
They do mention how difficult it is returning into the very heavy, two-dimensional, thick world of pain and emotional pain, mental pain, psychological pain, difficulties. But they also come back with hope, many of them come back with going, I am totally cool with whenever it happens. I'm really looking forward to it. And that's in a way how I felt when I was talking about this at the beginning of the show, is that through the study and the application of the esoteric sciences and the perennial philosophy, I have found much comfort, so much so that I too look forward to being able to pass over. And I think, again, it is the method of death, of leaving the physical body, and people are afraid of the pain, and that's certainly understandable. I wanted to ask you the question about this karma and this balance and the I don't want, it's not retribution, it's the balance. Who implements that when you are looking in the past life review, either in the quick near death experiences or the actual past life review? I wanted to give you the floor. Who is it that actually does the judgment there? And I'm using my hand quotes. Who is it that does the judgment of these deeds, good and bad, in the life just past?
Well, there are a number of different versions of this, but in certain esoteric traditions, there are a group of people called the Lords of Karma, who are extremely elevated planetary beings, non-physical beings, and they oversee this process. They're sometimes called in the Hindu literature Lipika, and they are the scribes, like the divine bureaucrats who record all this stuff that we say and do and think in some sort of indelible record, which people sometimes describe as the Akashic records. Now, these beings are extremely mysterious, but they're said to control the overall process. However, it's not something being imposed upon us, because the more we progress down this route, the more we evolve, the more we ourselves can play an active part in this process. So that if we are aware that there is this immutable law of laws, karma, we learn to start being aware of what we do and what we say and what we think. And by doing that, it's a creative process, because we are, to some extent, starting to shape our future lives, or at least we're ensuring that we don't need to get some of the bad stuff that we accrued in this and other lives by stuff that we did in previous incarnations. So we can learn to be a bit smarter about all this.
And that's where my understanding is. Now, again, I always clarify, I do not know hardly anything. I am always asking questions, and I have more questions at the end of these than I do answers. But I believe, in my understanding, that it is our own self that will look at our deeds and our behavior, and we will be able to see from another point of view, an elevated point of view or a enlightened point of view. We'll be able to see, because we can see from all sides. We will understand with much mortification how, what if it was negative, the selfishness, the greediness, the ignorance, the hatred that we thrived in when we were here. And we will be the ones that are the final judge for ourselves. And that doesn't mean our earthly self and our earthly ego. This means the higher self, if you will. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's the soul which is the judgment, because the soul doesn't bear necessarily much resemblance to the temporary personality and body that we occupy for a few decades in any one life. Very often, the requirements of the higher self or the soul are completely at odds with those of the lower personality, the lower self, which is all driven by personal needs and desires, etc., etc. And sometimes this is so much the case that people are literally at war with themselves. The higher self and the lower self are in permanent conflict, and this can cause extreme damage to people. So somehow, however we do it, we need to start making connections between that lower self and its higher counterpart.
I've said before to people when I'm talking and sharing my journey that it is up to us to overcome our lower self. And to me, the voice of the lower self is that of the vices. So anger, pride, lust, and all that. And then the higher self would be the one that sounds like patience, understanding, love, charity, compassion, and all that. How can we take the information that we're listening to here about karma and reincarnation? How can we try to set things right, turn this Titanic around? If we're listening and we want to do better, how would you advise that people take this information and put it into daily life in today, in this very day, here in November 2024?
Well, all religions talk about these virtues and vices, don't they, without exception. But people are turning more away from religions because they don't trust them. So what we need here is a new form of personal spirituality, and that means responsibility. One of the first things you have to do when you go on any spiritual path is to take responsibility for your actions and your words and all the rest of it. And this is how people can apply it. Just think before you say something, because words and thoughts are things, and they can wound and they can have lingering effects on people. And so we need to be very aware of this. We might think words are trivial. We might say something in anger, as we all do. But we have to remember that that is sending echoes out into the cosmos, and those echoes are going to come back and haunt us one day. So we have to be extremely aware of these things and start to control them as much as we can. And that includes our lower chattering minds. And this is extremely difficult to do. We can aspire to it, but it takes a lot of effort to achieve even a small reconciliation between the higher self and the lower self for most people. And most people can't, frankly, be bothered to put the effort in.
I understand, and there's so much about karma and thought, and again, trying to be good people just on the outside, but on the inside, you're in chaos and you're still hating and you're still loathing. There's work to do, and the work to do is to be done on yourself. Can't control anybody else. You can only control yourself, and that's what we're trying to show you here. And looking at this law of karma and equilibrium, every action has an equal opposite reaction. What about, Tim, the avatars and the teachers that have come full of compassion and love, and they get here to Earth and they are usually tortured and murdered, and we get rid of them? What about that karma? Would they just be not bothered, unperturbed, understanding that's part of the deal? What about that kind of karma?
Well, humans' destiny is ultimately to leave the human kingdom and to go to kingdoms beyond that, which we know not too much about, which are very, very esoteric. There is a class of human who reaches a point almost of perfection in which they can leave this mortal coil forever and go on to much better places, but they choose not to. They choose to remain with humanity as long as humanity has these difficulties and problems with its growth and development. The people in the Hindu religion call these people bodhisattvas because they have relinquished paradise or evolution into higher realms in order to help a suffering humanity.
I find that so beautiful. And for those of you who are from the Living Theosophy crowd or any of the Theosophical channels, The Voice of the Silence, definitely a textbook for the Bodhisattva. And these are all the same teachings, known by many, many different names. We talk about the esoteric meaning of everything here, which we're going to try to share our own understanding. We talk about consciousness, but the most important thing that we're doing here on that death show is helping to eliminate the fear and the mystery that surrounds death. And when we hear the word karma, we think of personal karma, individual karma. But there is far more to it. I wish it was that simple. You did this, this is what's going to happen. It's not quite so. There is other karma. There's geographical karma and country karma. Tim, can I give you the floor, please, to explain some of that? That's a big thing.
Well, it certainly is. When it comes to all classes of karma, be it personal or collective karma, and I'll deal with that in just a moment, there are basically three kinds, aren't there? There's the karma from past lives, which is playing out in our current lives. There's the karma from previous lives, which has yet to play out, because we're told that we only have to deal with karma when we're equipped to do so. It's not there to crush or kill us. So we can only deal with certain things when we've reached a certain point able to do so. And then the third class of karma is the karma that we're building up in this life and which will play out in a future life or lives.
You mentioned that we will not be facing any karma that we are not capable of dealing with. So you said as not to be crushed. Before you proceed, could you expand on that? That is a very powerful statement.
It's said very widely in the esoteric literature, and many writers have commented on this, that karma is not there to kill or crush us, although in some cases it might come close to that. So we only have to deal with particular forms of karma when we're equipped to do so, when we've reached a particular stage of evolution. So, however difficult and however overwhelming the difficulties we might face, they're not there to destroy us. So, there's karma from past lives playing out now, there's karma from past lives yet to play out, and there's the karma in this life that we're building up and will be dealt with in future lives. And this happens personally, but also collectively. So karma isn't just about individuals, it's also about all kinds of groups, numerous different types of groups, from nations and civilizations and empires, but cities and organizations, sports clubs. All these things are groupings of people, and even our own soul groups to which everyone belongs. These are also part of collective karma. So what is that collective karma? Well, it's the karma of all the people who've ever been involved in that football club or that political party or that commercial enterprise. Everybody who's been involved in it, that's the collective karma of it. But as with all these things, there's another factor that comes into play here. And that is that all organizations, empires, nations, everything has its own cycle of existence. And sometimes after a period of sophistication and rising to the heights of civilization, inevitably destruction and crumbling comes in. I think we'll be dealing with this probably in future episodes, but nothing stays the same forever. And karma and the cycles which we go through ensure that everything ultimately gets wiped away to be replaced by something else.
Beautifully said. That's so true. Nothing does last forever. Even if it's really, really good, it's not going to last forever. If it's really, really, really bad, it's not going to last forever. And yes, we do choose our role, and well, we choose to the best of our ability what we wish our soul to learn while we are here. And that includes, like you mentioned, the sports teams and the organizations and the countries, those interacting with that particular group of karma. So there's layers upon layers upon layers. It's not quite black and white, is it at all? And as we're thinking about the law of karma and reincarnation, for those of you who are listening, there is much proof of reincarnation. They're coming through every day. If you scroll on TikTok, you see these kids coming through and they're talking about, not when you were my mom, when I was your brother and we did this, da 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 da. And then they investigate that child's story, and it's true. And because of modern technology, there's more and more and more coming through. So, how can we use this to our advantage? How can we, if we are curious, you're listening right now, then you must be curious. Tim, what is the ultimate goal, would you say, of understanding and incorporating the law of, I know it's responsibility and ethical behavior, but how and what can we do to incorporate the law of karma and reincarnation in our lives today to make it better for tomorrow, for us and for everyone?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head when you said it's about morality and ethics, something which are becoming increasingly absent in this modern world. We see businesses, politicians, and other people of influence behaving without the slightest trace of morality. And morality and ethics, these have become quaint words, things that belonged in a previous era and which we've now, to some extent, abandoned. And yet, ethics and morality and doing the right thing lie at the heart of every spiritual pursuit, every religion, and every philosophy worth its name. So the world has to reshape itself morally in some way. Traditionally, that was the role of religions, but I don't think they have a function in this anymore. We need to find another way of making people aware that this morality isn't just something nice and quaint from the past that we've forgotten. It's something that we should enshrine in everything that we do today.
And the information that we're sharing here with you, the information that we've studied in these texts, we're happy to share links. It's available for free online. You don't have to follow anybody. You don't have to pay anything. The esoteric teachings are available for all who are seeking them, and they're there to feed the hungry. And that's why Tim and I are just really passionate students of these teachings, and we're both broadcasters. So we've come together to put this show together. And I did want to say one thing. There's also some kind of sometimes people will do the right things hoping to get good things back. That kind of karma, that kind of misuse of karma, you've got to do right things for the right reasons, for unselfish reasons, for the benefit of all beings on our planet. And realizing that we are all part, the great heresy is believing that we are separate from one another. We are not separate. So as you do to others, you do unto me and you do unto yourself. There's so much there. Tim, thank you so, so much. Next week, we're going to be moving forward with the materialist view of death, which is fascinating. A lot of people believe just this life, that's it. And then oblivion, that's it, nothing else. We're going to touch on the ridiculousness, which, Tim, I don't even get this, why people would want to preserve their brains, to extend this life and immortality. It's like polishing a turd. Excuse me, I do not get that. We're going to touch on that. And we're going to talk about the quest for immortality. That is an age-old thing, but again, a materialist view. Good grief, there's so much there. Thank you so much, Tim, for today. I think we might be finding our feet. What about you? Any final thoughts?
Well, I think we probably are beginning to find our feet, and I just hope we do before I die.
I love this so much. I'm not going to say anything that's perfect. Mwah. We'll see you all next week.
Bye. Have a good week, everyone.
Death comes to us all, but death is not a tragedy. Everyone's Book of the Dead by Tim Wyatt reveals a whole new perspective on what lies beyond this earthly life. The Egyptians have a Book of the Dead. The Tibetans have a Book of the Dead. Shouldn't you have one too? This captivating, richly illustrated book explores the mystery of death by examining it from every angle, sharing the ageless esoteric teachings on karma, reincarnation, and after-death states, as well as examining death and dying in different cultures, religions, and spiritual traditions. Death is not fatal, final, or permanent, but simply a transitional doorway to a new beginning. Get your copy of Everyone's Book of the Dead today at firewheelbooks.co.uk.